Hey, Ed Socia here with Data Center Hawk. We're out in the market helping our clients make better decisions. And when it comes to North America and the North American data center market, from primary markets like Northern Virginia and Dallas to emerging markets that we'll get into here shortly, understanding the nuances like tax incentives, power dynamics, and new and existing market entrants is key to being successful in your developments. And our team here wanted to get this series out to share what we're seeing and to help folks better navigate some of these more complex sites and talk through what's changing. So that said, today I have the privilege of being joined by my good friend and Data Center Hawk Senior Analyst, Montana Myer. Montana wears many hats at Data Center Hawk, but largely covers our hyperscale research. Montana, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, Ed, great to be here. I'm ready to dive into talking about North America.
That's right, man. Let's go. Well, Montana, let's first start by talking about what makes North America unique when compared to international regions like APAC, LATAM, and EMEA. And maybe right now, for the sake of this conversation, let's focus on the U.S. What would you say are the overarching themes that really stick out to you, or maybe some things that present challenges when considering developing a data center here?
Yeah, with my focus on the hyperscale side of things, I get to see and track a lot of those companies on a day-to-day basis. And it's really fun to see their growth that's taken place in North America. Those companies have a super large presence in North America, which I think makes the region unique. There's a big dichotomy of both self-build and leasing, which is starting to take place in other regions, but it's definitely the largest here in the U.S. Another thing, Ed, that sticks out is the government piece of it. We see in North America, in the U.S. there's both state. There's a lot of state level tax incentives, but there's also local, city level municipal tax incentives, whether that's a sales tax or a tax abatement. And that's really driving demand in some of these different regions where that's taking place. And so I think that's an important factor to consider. And there's also just other laws that people, I think we're starting to see some both good and bad from these laws that are being put in place. Specifically around AI and the use of, biometric inputs to some of those AI systems. That's really playing a big role in where development's taking place.
Yeah, Montana, I kind of think of it, I guess, somewhat like maybe those Russian nesting dolls that they have where, you have the federal government, and then we're a democratic republic, so we're a nation of states, and within those states there are counties, and within counties there are local municipalities, and it's the same when you think about, the power side of things. And there's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, and then there are independent system operators. There are, you have to delineate between regulated and deregulated markets. And then there are, EMCs and cooperatives and things like that are in certain regions. So there's certainly no one size fits all approach that can be sort of washed, rinsed, and repeated across the United States because of these sort of nuances from market to market. And I think understanding those, the folks who understand those are going to be the ones that really, I think, are able to get through some of that red tape, are able to thoughtfully figure out their lead times, understand, hey, we have power challenges in this region. This other region has similar incentives, and maybe that path to power is 2 years ahead of the formerly mentioned site. So that's a great segue, Montana. So with all that in mind, let's talk about where the activity is happening, and then maybe we can get into sort of where the market's heading, outline some of those key emerging markets. But before we get there, let's start with what have been historically referred to as primary markets. So Northern Virginia, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, Phoenix, Silicon Valley, and I know there's a lot of folks probably listening thinking, what about Hillsborough? What about these other markets? But let's focus on those core, five or six first. I guess what are you seeing there?
Yeah, those markets are already very sizable, but we continue to see growth. Typically that's taking place in some sort of new submarket. So, in Northern Virginia, that's headed down that I-95 corridor. Atlanta development continues to head south. Same with Dallas. And in Dallas, it's been to the north of Dallas and Richardson and Plano, but because of some of those power issues, like you mentioned, it's started to head south, and then the effects that we're already seeing of that in South Dallas is causing future development to already start to look at Fort Worth. So those are just a few examples of where development's occurring still in these major markets, but it's typically in a new submarket where land is more available and there are potentially quicker paths to power than in your traditional hubs of those markets. The one other thing I'd add to that real fast though is in those primary markets, we're also seeing, for the most part, hyperscale users both build and lease, which is an interesting aspect that hyperscale users have built in some of these, more or less random locations historically that are kind of out of the metro areas, but still sizable campuses. And we're starting to see that they're a little bit closer to these metro areas. Their self-built stuff is, but then they're also leasing, sizable chunks of capacity within the market as well.
So Montana, when we're talking about the growth of specifically the hyperscalers. At Data Center Hawk, we're on the phone all day, every day, and we're combing through filings and all of that. I guess, what are you seeing in terms of numbers when it comes to sort of what these guys are taking down?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces of that. There's the land side, and then there's the leasing side. I'll start on the land side. I think what's really interesting is how much land, but also how big these different parcels that they're purchasing are. In the last 2 years, in both 23 and 24, the hyperscale users alone purchased over just roughly 15,000 acres in both the years. So that right there is 30,000 acres. Yeah. And then just in the greater market, just for data center development, it's probably around over 35,000 acres. So
wow,
that's a lot of land for data center development. And it's to serve these giant AI training clusters right now, but it'll continue to change as the market changes.
How about absorption, Montana?
Let's touch on absorption.
Yeah,
on the leasing side, Ed. Yeah, in 2023 we saw just over 4 gigs of absorption, which was already record breaking, and then now we're sitting here early 2025, but in 2024, it's well over 5 gigs. So over a gig of growth in 1 year. In an already power constrained market is, pretty phenomenal. But it just shows what's happening in the market. There is demand for AI, but there's also enterprise demand. Businesses, financial institutions. People are moving, towards more technology, more data, and so we have to have the infrastructure to support those things.
That's very well said, Montana. I think it's important too that, or it's important to touch on the fact that, yes, the lion's share of the demand is coming from cloud service providers and hyperscalers. But, there are, again, as we said earlier in this call, it's not a one size fits all approach. So, understanding and sort of delineating between different taxonomies of data centers and understanding the needs of your end user are paramount in being able to be successful in this space and make sure that you're growing and you're nimble and you're able to change with sort of an evolving industry. It's important to understand too that the energy landscape is changing. And that is also driving some of the migration away from maybe more of the central business district stuff or historically. And when I say historically, listen, this industry is moving so quickly. Historical could be 6 months ago. But, if we think about some of these submarkets, like when we talk about Dallas, South Dallas, a couple months ago, we were hearing over and over Lancaster and Red Oak. And now we're hearing more Grand Prairie and Midlothian. We're hearing more about, Weatherford, Texas and Wichita Falls, Texas. And I think there's some nuances there to understanding the path to power. So if you have on-site nat gas generation as your bridging power, in Texas, that's going to be significantly cheaper than it is to deploy fuel cells in maybe the Pacific Northwest. The utility costs in the Pacific Northwest are already higher, but then couple that with power timelines and things like that. So I think that's really one of the tailwinds in the space, kind of pushing folks away again from more established core markets, like when you think about core markets, if you think Loudoun County, core Ashburn, Prince William County, the Manassas area, and going down, as you mentioned, that I-95 corridor, Culpeper, Fauquier County, all the way down to Henrico County, and subsequently, I think stuff's going to continue to fill in between Charlotte, North Carolina, and Henrico County or Richmond, Virginia. So with that said, let's shift towards some more emerging markets, not so much the submarkets of primary markets, but let's talk about maybe some new regions of the United States, or maybe said differently, regions of the United States that are in the past couple quarters getting more attention from both the hyperscalers and just third-party developers.
Yeah, the one I think you just mentioned was Charlotte. There's both hyperscale users under construction there already, but there also are lots of land acquisitions being taken place by those third-party operators. So I think we'll start to see a lot of growth in Charlotte take place over the next, 12 months, but also, 36 months out. Another region that's really interesting to me is the South. So think like Louisiana, Mississippi, the north part of those states, and even up into Arkansas. Hyperscale users have announced some pretty large campuses across those states, and I think we're going to see, and I'm pretty confident we're going to see more announcements here in the next year. Multiple, 1,000-acre campuses that are announced.
Montana.
So
let me jump in there real. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that's causing these third-party operators to want to, in a sense, co-locate their developments next to these hyperscale users. And so we're starting to see the operator step into these new regions to serve the hyperscale users.
Yeah, and what I was going to add to that is we're hearing more about the conversations taking place sooner rather than later between the hyperscalers or the folks representing the hyperscalers, or maybe you don't have a hyperscaler in tow, but your intention is that you're going to build a 300 megawatt data center and have a single tenant user, sign that lease. But we're hearing that more of these folks are speaking to utilities farther out, which I think really behooves them, in that the utilities and some utilities like Dominion has seen this growth over decades, because that's Northern Virginia is second to none when it comes to capacity. But some of these more emerging utilities, maybe they didn't have the luxury of seeing so many 10, 20, and 30 megawatt data centers. They have folks coming in and saying, hey, we need a gigawatt of power off of your lines and off of your grid. And I think to do that intentionally and to satisfy the fuel mix needs that you have, the renewable portfolio standards of your end users, those conversations need to be taking place sooner. So historically, where it was 6, 12, 18 months out, we're getting closer to 24 to 36 months out. But I do think that some of the kind of growing pains with new emerging markets and regulatory bodies and subsequently the utilities that are responsible for bringing power online, I think those are starting to smooth out a little bit, because they're getting used to working with these companies and understanding really what does it take to build a digital infrastructure presence within our utility service territory.
Yeah, and they're getting creative too in their solutions, even if there is at a 36-month timeline. They're bringing in some sort of natural gas plant where they can have that bridge power until the utility power can meet their needs. So I think that helps as well, and that's why we're starting to see development occur in regions where natural gas is a little bit more plentiful.
That's right, and that thank you for bringing me back. That was sort of the impetus of me bringing that up. Was you mentioned the northern parts of those southern states, and I know Entergy is working with a lot of these hyperscalers, the key utility in Louisiana. And I think, Montana, historically, if 10 years ago you had told people that Louisiana was going to be an emerging market or a hotspot for developing the cloud and hyperscale deployments, I think you probably would have been laughed out of the room. But, the proof is in the pudding, and we're seeing it take place today. Montana, one other kind of area, one emerging market, I guess it's not so much an emerging market, but I want to touch on Chicago for a minute. Chicago is an established market, but there are submarkets where historically we saw stuff happening in Elk Grove Village. We saw stuff happening or migrating rather to Hoffman Estates. Now we're seeing it move to DeKalb and areas like that. But let me pause there, Montana. Let me get your thoughts on Chicago, because I know that you've seen a ton of hyperscale a ton of hyperscale development sort of taking place in that sort of broader area. Can you touch on that for me?
Yeah, I think a majority of that is really taking place in Indiana, which is interesting. Indiana started to serve as this sub-market almost, in a sense, to Chicago. And I think a big reason, we talked a little bit about tax incentives earlier, but I think it's because of those tax incentives. They put those in place in 2023. And then, in 2024, the major hyperscale users who build their own deployments or their own facilities all announced campuses in the state, in 2024. And we're going to see more of those self-built campuses be announced in 2024 or in 2025 rather. And so I think, that tax incentive, and then that's coupled with some of those biometric laws that are up there, and some of those northern states has caused these developments to move to places where it's a little bit more suitable or more friendly for that development to take place.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that very much, Montana. I don't think you can speak about the sort of explosive growth we've seen with digital infrastructure without mentioning the fiber side. I don't want to get too deep into the fiber today because, as many folks know, our sister company is Fiber Locator. I would love to get those guys on one of these podcasts, one of our episodes, and have them really speak to the fiber side. But I do think it's important to highlight, that's a big piece of the puzzle. And you can have a beautiful car, but if you don't have gas in it, if it's not an electric car, or if it's an electric car and you don't have a plug to charge it, you're not going to be able to use your car. It's just going to sit there. And it's the same thing with your data center, with power and connectivity. And otherwise you're just building a big building. So the connectivity piece, the power piece, all of that is so fundamental, and getting it right is what we're trying to help folks do. We want them to be thoughtful. We want them to be sort of ahead of their competition and really understanding, where is the market going? What are our competitors doing? And how do we play in this space? And how do we grow in this space, efficiently and successfully to continue just building this vast and robust grid system and interconnected digital infrastructure environment. Well, Montana, thank you so much for joining. These, like we say, we're going to get these out somewhat regularly and help the folks out there understand kind of what we here at Data Center Hawk are seeing. So, Montana, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say to the people.
Yeah, it's great to be on here with you, Ed, and it's great to be in the data center industry. So we want to connect with people in the industry and help them make better decisions. And so feel free to reach out, and we'd love to help.
Thanks, Montana. Like I said, I'm Ed Socia with Data Center Hawk. We're out in the market helping you make better decisions, and feel free to tune into these moving forward. We're going to be digging deeper into specific markets. We're going to touch on a number of different sort of elements of what makes this industry so interesting, the quick moving parts, the fiber, the power. So please keep your eyes peeled, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
See ya.